Okay guys, we'll be starting in few minutes, so please stay tuned, don't leave the meeting. People are still joining, so please wait up.
Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up. Tonight, we gonna light it up, babe. Tonight, we gonna light it up. Just like the sunrise, we gonna light it up. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up. Tonight, we gonna light it up.
Good afternoon, guys. Thank you for joining our webinar on web development and UI UX in a nutshell. ACM PCCOE&R is conducting a five webinars, and this is the third one. Next slide. So hey, I'm Sushil. I'm Sushil Buragute, and I'm a web developer and UI UX engineer. I'm currently working my way up Node.js and simultaneously learning my way in the cloud, that is the AWS. And I'll let my co-host introduce himself. Ashwin, over to you.
Okay, so hello guys, I'm Ashwin Khode. I'm a web developer and an UI UX designer. So I welcome you all to our webinar on Introduction to Web Development and UI UX Design. So yeah, enjoy the webinar. So the structure of the talk will be, so what, why, and which of the webinar, web development. So what is web development, why web development, and which is web development types. So let's get started with your journey, and in the end we will talk about why design in web development is necessary. And a quick note, this webinar is to get you started in web development, not to teach you web development. So don't expect any deep talks on the subjects.
So yeah, a kind discretion for you that this webinar is going to contain a lot of memes. We mean no harm. If you're offended, you're sorry. Next slide. So, what is web development? Web development is work involved in developing a website for the internet, or let's say building a web app. So pretty much all the web apps which you interact with on a daily basis, a good example of them would be the YouTube app, Gmail, or PWS like Outlook. So building, creating, and maintaining websites, it's pretty simple, right? And that's the point we want to make, that the barrier for code when it comes to web development is very, very, very low compared to anything like, let's say, mobile development or data analysis. Why web development? Because web is such an intensive platform. It's so huge that it's gone to a point where it has got 4.5 billion internet users, and due to the boom in geo, majority of the Indian population has got on board and got hooked to that 1.5 GB daily limit. So yeah, web is growing at an insane speed. More people are using the laptops, or let's say web connected devices to binge Netflix during this lockdown period. So why web development? Why should you as a developer invest your time in learning web development? Because it is one of the most top paid skills. And once you become a web developer, you can get into any role that you want. And as you can get into any role that you want, there's a high chance of employment growth in you. And web development can never die because you're always going to be interacting with a physical device like a laptop or a server. But isn't web development one of those underpaid jobs? Isn't Wix or Webflow taking away all the money from the devs? No, hold up. Let us explain. So, as you can look at this stat from Stack Overflow, actually the main coding roles such as web developer, web design, software engineering, full stack dev, all have got good salaries. And over the years, once you become good at your own niche or your own skill, like focusing on front end or the back end, you tend to you tend to get a bigger package. Hold up, now don't start calculating money because we've got a talk lined up for you. So here's the role which a web developer can do. Here's are the opportunities which are present for you currently. Front-end developers, back-end developers, and full stack developers. Think of front-end developers as the developers who are working on the user interface, or the part which the user is going to be interacting with directly. That's coding all the front-end interactions is the job of the front-end developer. He let's say the code of the front end of the website, that is the part the user sees and interact with. That's the code for the front end dev. Mostly you'll be working with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and probably a framework which we'll be touching about. And here's where the design aspect comes into it, because as you're making those interactions with the user, you need to actually focus on a design a lot more, because the design is a hit or miss when it comes to web development or any platform, let's say. Because if you need to explain how, uh, if you, okay, here's an indirect comparison which I came up with. UI UX is like a joke. If you need to explain to your user how to use it, then obviously it's a bad joke. Moving on to backend, the role of a backend developer. The backend developer who is the person who actually works behind the scenes on building the technologies which goes into scaling the platform or the web app. So when I'm referring to web app, is actually just make it clear in your mind. Web app is something which you use on a daily basis, say YouTube, Google, or Outlook. So working behind the scenes, the role of a backend dev is actually working on databases, building databases, building actual frameworks, or how the API is going to get fetched, how load balance is going to be done. A lot of concepts, but we're going to keep it simple for you. So everything which involves a terminal, a backend developer has a role for it. Full stack developers are actually a combination of front end and back end developers. These are the guys who get the highest package when it comes to the corporate world because they can work on both the front end and the back end. And the main advantage that full stack developers actually have is that they actually know that what it takes to link a front end and a back end. So that's a clear advantage. So when we are starting out with web development, we highly recommend getting started with front end rather than back end, because backend is more analytical, and once you get the grasp of what you need actually in the front end, backend becomes a piece of cake. Next slide. So the internet is the easiest thing to get into. But to be an internet retailer, you just need a URL. And this code from Bill Gates can't be any truer, because look at the startups which have been just founded by using a simple URL. Do I need to mention Facebook? Next slide.
So yeah, let's go.
So
We are going to take you on a journey to become a web developer. So yeah, let's get started. So to get into web development, you must know what is internet. This is a prerequisite. This is the most basic thing we are talking about. So in an internet, you must know what is internet, how does it work behind the scenes, what is HTTP, HTTPS, how browser works, how browser renders a website, how it fetches the file, everything. What is domain name, DNS, hosting, all these basic thing you need to learn before getting yourself into web development or any tech you are interested about web development. So what's next? This is front end development, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. This is completely front end built on. So yeah, what is HTML? HTML is the latest version. HTML5 is the latest version of hypertext markup language, the code that describes web pages. You obviously heard about HTML or studied HTML in 10th standard or in your high school or something. But I must aware you, HTML is huge. You can do so much. You can build so much on HTML itself. So yeah, once you get familiar with HTML, move on to CSS. So CSS is cascading style sheet, which is going to illustrate the look, style, and format all the document written in any markup language. So what is document? Document is basically the web page you are rendering on your browser. It is basically a document, and CSS is used to style that document, to lay out that document. Yeah. So once you get used to CSS, once you get familiar with that, then you must learn JavaScript. Now, what is JavaScript? JavaScript is a scripting language that enables you to create dynamically update content, control multimedia, animate images, and pretty much everything else. Okay, that's a theory definition, but what actually JavaScript do? Every action that you perform on a web page is actually done by JavaScript. JavaScript is responsible for every action, whether it is showing a pop-up, whether it is showing all the animation on your web pages, manipulating your web pages, component, it's all done by JavaScript. Okay. So I want to give you a basic example by comparing web development to human anatomy. So yeah, HTML, consider HTML as the skeleton of our body. So it is a basic structure on what we are going to we are going to style and build our website onto. So to style our HTML content, we are going to use CSS. So CSS is basically the skin of the skeleton, and the JavaScript is the brains. Every action we do in our daily life is JavaScript, or consider every action doing a web page is doing is JavaScript. So yeah, this is a good way you can understand web development process. So exactly how much is enough for you to become a master in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? So I would like to suggest try to make a web page containing a list and a form using just HTML. Don't style it, don't add any action and all. Just try building simple basic form using HTML. If you are able to build that without looking here and there, you are good at HTML. You can go on to the CSS part. You can learn CSS. So what you should know in CSS, learn the basics. Learn the basics means learn how to style small components, like how to style a font, how to style the images, how to style small components, like any component on your web page, and how you should arrange those components, like how you should make a layout, how you build a layout of your web page. So while making your layout, you will come across floats, display, positioning, box model, flexbox, and grid. These are the terms that you are going to face while learning CSS. We are not going to be in depth, but I'm just giving you glance of what are these. Okay, so yeah, that's and lastly, responsive design and media queries is what you are going to face in CSS. These are the most important topic in CSS because 80% population uses web pages, websites on mobile devices. So what is the use of responsive design in media queries? So it is basically used to convert your website you have built for desktop to mobile view for mobile user interface. So you are basically converting that desktop website into mobile website. So responsive design, this is what responsiveness called. That same website can render onto desktop and mobile. This is what responsive design means. So once you are able to convert that desktop build web page onto mobile web page, you are done with CSS. So yeah, you can next go to JavaScript. So here where things gets interesting. JavaScript does all the actions. So you how you get started in JavaScript. JavaScript is like any other language you learn in your your developer journey. So you have to learn the basic syntax, basic constructs, like what are the advantages of JavaScript, why we are using it, learn that fundamentals. Once you are done with that, then you have to move to DOM manipulation. Now, what is DOM? DOM is actually document object model. So whatever a web page is, it is actually a document built using HTML, that is hypertext markup language. So yeah, you must know how to manipulate the content in that document using JavaScript. So once you are familiar with that, then move on to Fetch API Ajax. So yeah, we are going to see what is API in further slides, but I'll give you an example. API is basically a interface between front end and back end that is helps to communicate between those two factors. So we will talk about that later. So yeah, that is one thing you are going to come across when you are learning JavaScript. And then there's ES6 plus. So what is ES6? It is actually a version or a typing rule set that is defined by ECMAScript. ES means ECMAScript. That is a set of rules you use while writing JavaScript code. So you must know what are those ECMAScript versions and what are the new updates, what are the new functionalities that JavaScript introduced in that language. Okay. So yeah, JavaScript is huge. One thing I must tell, JavaScript is huge and you must keep learning as things come. Okay. So yeah, move on to next slide. This slide will be explained by Sushil. Sushil.
So what's GitHub and GitHub? Git and GitHub is basically the breathing backbone of developer ecosystem, right? So let me explain this with an example. Consider you're working on a project. Let's say it's building a weather app, and you're okay. You decide to add a new function, and it takes you are about 2 weeks. You're 2 weeks deep into the development, and you think that, oh, maybe I don't really need this feature after all. So what do? If you don't have Git, or let's say GitHub, you haven't posted your code on GitHub, you actually need to manually remove those bits of code out. And that's where GitHub comes in and solves the problem of version control for you. So it's so easy to actually create a GitHub account and push your code. And by doing that, you just ensure your version control for your code. So whenever So let's say you run into the same problem again, but you actually have the code history for let's say two weeks ago. So you can easily go back there and go start working fresh on the new feature again. So basically, Git and GitHub actually increases the productivity, and boom, you need to learn it. Git is basically a version control system which lets you manage and keep track of resource history. And setting up a repo in GitHub is so easy that you have to, after you've set a repo up, you can easily uh, push a code over there, and you've actually saved your code. If anything happens to your system, your code is safe on the cloud. So package managers like npm and yarn are actual good boosters when it comes to web dev. These are actually open source compiled package managers. So if let's say I'm looking for bootstrap, right, and bootstrap is a famous css framework which Ashwin will touch upon in a bit. So let's say I have to install that or use that in my project. Without bootstrap, without npm, I'll need to manually download bootstrap into my computer, and whenever I'm hosting my project on a server, I need to manually install it over there. And here's where npm comes in and solves that problem. With npm, I have to just put in one single command like npm install bootstrap, and boom, bootstrap is installed on your machine right away. And same for the hosting part. So package managers like this actually have a ton of packages, open source packages hosted for you. So any component or any effect that you need or any piece of code which you need, you can actually inherit once you have those packages installed. So that's where npm and yarn come into the picture. Next slide.
So yeah, what is CSS architecture? So when you write CSS, when you get into designing your web page, there's actually a set of rules defined by the authorities. So there are three types of architecture: BEM, OOCSS, SMACSS. So let me explain what is that. So BEM is actually block element modifier, in which you have to specify CSS blocks in actually represent the naming system using blocks, element, and then their modifier. So suppose there is a header. So you must name the CSS code like header. Then its element, like its element will be home, about, contact. So that's the element. And modifier is something like when you hover on that home button, then it must get highlighted. So that's the modifier part, that you are modifying it to some other piece of code. Yeah, that's BEM. Then OOCSS is object oriented CSS, where you have to use the code. You write the CSS code using object. Like you have, if you are using stylings header, so you have to write that code for header only. Then you move on to the next component, like the body of the web page. Then you have to style particularly for that body only. That's object oriented, where you have to write CSS code according to the object of your web page. Then there's SMS CSS. That's not recommended, but you can look into that. But I will recommend VM. That's the most used architecture, and that is gonna need to build any web page you are dealing. Because what is the use of CSS architecture is, when you build a web page and you open it after say 1 year, so you have to know what are the changes you need to do in that piece of code, so that you reflect that particular changes. So that's why architecture is useful. So you know that you have code in a particular way. That is a set of rules that you have used. So yeah, that's why you are going to use architecture. So now what is CSS preprocessor? So yeah, it is just a CSS coding language with superpowers. So consider you have styling your web page. Then there's going to be 700, 800, thousands of lines of codes. So to change, to what you need to find all the things where you have coded this piece of code, where you have styled this component. So to avoid that much mess, you use CSS preprocessor. It just provides you a lot of functionality, it helps you a lot in designing web pages. I recommend SAS. It's the most used library by developers in building web pages. It's just amazing. You just search SAS, do your research on that. You will know what's its power. Now, what is CSS framework? CSS framework is basically already components are styled and that code is stored for you. So you just have to use that particular piece of code to style your web page. So why you don't have to do all the hard work by yourself. You don't have to manually write. You don't have to manually style each and every element of your web page. You can copy the piece of code from the framework and just use it with one line of code on your web page. So that's what CSS framework is. There are three popular CSS framework, that Bootstrap, Materialize CSS, Bulma CSS. So yeah, just uh, look at those, whichever you find useful, whichever you find amazing, you can use that. But yeah, that's powerful because when you have to build a multi-page website, you are going to write thousands and thousands of code. To avoid that kind of mess, you can use CSS framework. And one advantage of CSS framework is you don't have to manually work on responsiveness of design. That means you don't have to manually design your website for desktop and mobile. It is going to do that work for you in the backend. So how amazing is that? That's why most of the people use CSS framework. So yeah, Sushil will now explain this slide.
So here's the most debatable topic out there. React.js, Angular, or Vue.js, which framework to pick? Basically, let me explain what's framework. And framework is basically a piece of code which is already written for you, which enhances the capability of you writing code exponentially. So let's say I'm using Angular right now. So the features which are used present in Angular, it's like I'm writing in a different language, but it's plain old JavaScript. Uh, to use the exact terms, let's say Angular is based on TypeScript. I'm going to be using TypeScript. Uh, I'm using TypeScript to write all that code. With that comes the concept of virtual DOM. So basically all these three frameworks have got similar syntaxes which help the developer to increase web performance because and add insane functionality to their apps. Let me give you a brief history on React.js, Angular, and Vue. Angular was actually developed by Google and it was first released in 2010, making it oldest of the lot. It is based on TypeScript and TypeScript developed by Microsoft, if you don't know. And its substantial shift occurred in 2016 when the release of Angular 2 and uh, it it moved on to Angular 3, and that kind of outraged the developer community of Angular because it was a very big substantial skit and there was compatibility issues. And when you're in a big corporation, compatibility is the biggest thing which is out there because you've got ton of browsers to support. So Vue.js is the newest of the lot. It's the youngest member of the group. It was developed by an ex-Google employee, and over the last 3 years, Vue has seen a substantial shift in popularity. Even though it does not have a backing of a very large company, it's still able to have a it still has a very fair developer community around it. So, and the last we're going to be talking about is React. React is backed by Google, as you all know. And out of all these three, if you're a beginner who's just starting out with web development, I say Vue.js is the one for you just because it has got ton of UI components. It's very beginner friendly compared to Angular or TypeScript because it has got ton of good documentation. It has got a good community built around it, and also so it has pre-processing view. It has pre-processors for CSS, which helps just like Ashwin talked about. So Ashwin, do you want to add any more points to this?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, what a framework is, some things are already built for you. You just have to use that on top of it to build your desired web page. So yeah, there are three frameworks. You can pick any of that, but we recommend you use Vue.js because it is very easy to learn Vue.js. You will get to know what are the things that we are going to use in a framework. What are the things we need to build a web page using framework. There are various things in a framework. Framework is actually very huge. So if you are getting into it, choose the right one and then work on that. Go deep into that framework. Okay. So yeah, moving on to the next slide. And the list goes on. There are so many things you can do as a web developer. You can build progressive web apps, which are web apps you are converting into mobile apps. Then there is server-side rendering. So basically, what server-side rendering is, you render your code onto the server and then push it to the browser to display it. So this increases your efficiency, performance, and uh, all the performance aspect of a web page. Then next is static site generator. Now, what is static site? Static site is what where its content is going to be static, which is not going to be changed at all. It is, for example, a blog or a landing page of any product. It the content in that web page is going to be static, which is not going to be changed at all. So you can build static site using just a snap of your fingers, using Gatsby.js, Next.js, Nuxt.js. So these are all tools that you are going to need for you building things. Okay, we are just giving examples so that you will know once you get into web development you are going to face all those things. So yeah, we are showing you all the things. So next you can do build mobile application. Yes, you heard it right. Web developer can build mobile application using React Native and Flutter. So once you learn React, the framework, you can also build mobile application using React Native. How cool is that? So a web developer can also build mobile application, and he can also build desktop application using Electron. So what you are seeing in the bracket are actually the name of the tools that you are going to need to build that particular thing. So yeah, there's that. And the front end is done. So this is all pretty much front end. So we are going to say, just do your research and know the tool, what you are going to need to build your web application, and then go into that. And once you get into that particular thing, learn deeply, learn all the things. Don't skip in the middle of that just because you find something else is in the market and that is cool. Okay. So yeah, Sushil will start the backend part.
So get started with backend. You need to know the prerequisites for this. How the internet works. How your data from point A gets across to another server which is located in another continent at point B. The basics of front end. So basically, how are you going to fetch data, or how you're going to get data from the front end and store it on your back end. How OS actually works, how Ubuntu or let's say many Linux distros work, because actually those are going to be installed on your server when you're working in the cloud, and it's general knowledge. Memory management, that will be used for load balancing. Terminal usage, because you're going to be installing a lot of repos, lot of npm packages. Process management, threads and concurrency, IO management, and networking concepts. These are all essentials if you want to get into when you're starting backend. So you need to pick a language. So here's that debate again, which build to pick. Here we've got the option of JavaScript, Python, Ruby, Rust, Go, PHP. And just to give you a bit of market research that Ashwin and I have done, PHP, Rust, Ruby, and Java are kind of getting out of frame when it comes to picking up backend languages with the newer devs, because the community for JavaScript, or let's say even Python is a bit lagging, but is amazing. More devs are focusing on Node.js as the backend language than let's say Python or Go. But let me touch upon that point, because Node.js is based on JavaScript, right? And once you have gotten familiar with front end, or how you can add functionality to your app using JavaScript, why would you learn another language just to satisfy your backend needs? So yeah, many devs just work in one language, that is majorly JavaScript. So learning a database. There are two types of database. One is structured database, which is called SQL, and a non-structured database, which is no SQL. Pretty straightforward, right? So why do you need a database? Database is actually used for storing all your users data. Like let's say I've logged on to Google, so Google will actually authenticate my data and see, okay, is this password matching, is this user name matching, is this IP address matching for this person, and based on that it's gonna uh, fetch my data. And so all the data which your app interacts, which is actually stored on a database which is present on the cloud.
Okay. So as I talked earlier about API, we are going to learn about API. So what is API? API is actually application program interface. So as I said earlier, it is going to be an interface between your front end and back end. API is going to be the communication interface. So if a user asks for some data onto the front end, that call is being made by API onto the back end. Then back end sends the data through API and front end shows that data. So consider, suppose you are calling a friend. So to call a friend, you have to dial his number. You have to call. You have to request the call to the network service provider. Then that's the network service provider sends the call to your friend. So that's the similar functionality of API. When front end actually sends the call to the API, API requests the data from the back end. Then the back end sends the data to the API. Then API is going to show that data to the front end. So there are four types of API. Well, there are more APIs, but there are four basic API: RESTful API, JSON API, SOAP, authentication API. So what is RESTful API? RESTful API are those through which you can communicate any kind of data. There's no restriction on the data type you are communicating with. You can send images, you can send links, you can send any type of data through RESTful API. On the other hand, JSON API there are some restriction in JSON API. You can send but some type of data through JSON, and you have to code that API in JSON only. Now you must be thinking, what is JSON? That's the point. That this is where JavaScript comes into picture. It is JavaScript object notation. Okay, so JSON is a kind of code which is used in JavaScript. Okay, so yes, you are going to code API which is going to communicate some files, some data over to the front end and the back end. Then there's SOAP, and then there is authentication. You know what? When you go onto some new website and you see sign up with Google, there's this type of authentication takes place, and API is responsible for that authentication. Okay, so move on to the next slide. We will see what are the things a backend developer should know. So a backend developer should know all about web server, how to build a web server, how to make it communicate with the front end part, and how to make the web server work through different websites. Okay, website means, I mean web pages. There are multiple web pages in your website. So a web server must know how to communicate in those web pages. Then there's caching. Once you go to a new website, then there's some caching takes place. Now, what is caching? Some amount of data is going to be stored on your local machine. And next time you go to that website, then that local data is going to be used to render that web page. This is useful for performance, increasing time for rendering the page. It helps you to load the page faster, basically, and get your things done. And then there's GraphQL. GraphQL actually a query language. So when you search for things, like when you type something on Google, it is actually a request you are sending to the API using query language. When you search for YouTube, then YouTube is actually a word stored in a query language, and it is going to give output all the related terms regarding YouTube, that it's related to YouTube. That's where GraphQL takes useful. You must GraphQL takes all the things which is related to the string you are given to the to the website, and it is going to fetch all that things and going to show it to you. And the next things will be explained by Sushil.
So web security. So whenever you're working for a corporation, you need to make sure as a backend developer that you don't leave open ports. As demonstrated by yesterday's discussion, that web security is a very, 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 very important domain when you are working in a big corporation. Because if you leave out vulnerabilities in your code, let's say setting up servers, and hacker can easily access your databases. And I've seen it actually happen with a couple of my friends in my network, that they for the startups had the database actually locked out because they didn't set up the MongoDB authentication correctly. So what happened is they got asked for ransomware and they had to pay in Bitcoin. So as a backend developer, you need to actually figure out all these vulnerabilities and practice good, follow the good practices when you're setting up yours. Testing, mostly testing is getting automated, but you need to actually focus on uh, getting your automated test done. Like I have to tell you it in a nutshell that you have to create automated tests for testing the APIs, see if everything is going fine from time to time. There is also a thing which hackers can actually intercept and provide null value, and you have to actually create exception cases when it comes to backend, because if something is not returning then what what should it do? Should it return the 404 or should it go through a database to see the last updated value for it? And lastly, coming to CIDT. CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous deployment. It's basically the automation working for you. All the deployment. So let me give you an example. You're working on a project and you've pushed your app to, let's say, Netlify or Heroku. We'll be touching the hosting part in the coming slides. But yeah, you've pushed a code onto GitHub, and if it was manual, you will actually manually update the code everywhere, like upload it to the server just to get to see your changes. But with CI/CD, you can actually see in real time code change real time. Like you will add functionality to app within 5 to 10 seconds. It's that fast. So with CI/CD, you don't need to worry about integrating your code with the already set databases and all that. But yeah, I know backend would have been tough for you, but now we're gonna introduce a new concept to you which removes backend out of the picture altogether. Next slide. So let's take a 5-second break to get your mind clear. So yeah, want to build an app without any backend? We have an alternative for you. Firebase by Google. Firebase by Google is a mobile platform that helps you quickly develop high quality apps. Okay, and why we recommended it? Because you can build apps, build your projects without managing infrastructure. Plus, it's backed by Google and trusted by top apps. So here are the features which are present in Firebase, right? It has databases, it has authentication, it has analytics, and it has the usual backend code if you want to remove some code out of the Firebase ecosystem.
So yeah,
So
now on to the hosting. So consider you build an web app and you want to deploy it onto the server, onto the internet. So how do you do it? So that process is actually called hosting your app. So there are multiple platforms where you can host your app. So one of them is GitHub Pages. We talked about Git and GitHub. So GitHub is the platform where you can host your app, you push your code to the GitHub and then host it there. And then there's Netlify, there's Webhost, there's Heroku. These all are the platform. You can search it on Google. You can host your apps there. Then this is the journey of a web developer. You have to cover this checkpoint in order to become a web developer. So see, we just want to say, go do your research and then get into the things. We just don't want you to go into the things blindly and then messing it up. Follow, learn the market, see where what the community wants, then go into that. So yeah, we will take a 30 seconds break. So fresh up, we will have UI UX part coming up in 30 seconds. We'll be back soon. So yeah, guys, we'll be having Q&A in the end. So if you have any doubts or you want something in particular, you have some respect request, you will stay tuned till the end. We are going to answer all those queries of yours. So yeah, please stay tuned. We are now starting UI UX design part. Web development part is completed. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have all your doubts cleared. Yeah, if they are not, please stay tuned till the end.
yeah, we've got a surprise lined up for you in the end. So let's start with UI UX and design. So whichever products you look into, they have majorly built on three things: a visually pleasing UI, a functional user interface, and a fast performance. So I'd like to give you an example of Swiggy. If you think of Swiggy right now, yeah, I'm sorry, we don't want to think about food, but yeah, Swiggy is an amazing example to give because they've got a really fabulous design. It's built on visually pleasing UI. You actually, it's all intuitive, right? It's too cool and not like, it's too cool to appeal to you. And it's even got a functional UX. Like you don't need a manual to like to learn through a Swiggy app, like how to operate, how to order. It's that simple. I think it needs you to actually three or four steps to just to order one biryani. But yeah, that's for a later part. And it's based on fast performance. Like here's a hypothetical situation. You're hungry and uh, you've got it takes around 10 to 15 minutes for your order to get placed. How bad would it seem? You'll be frustrated AF. So that's where you need fast performance for your app. So here's where the talk we are giving actually bundles up into one code pyramid, and hence you can build a platform.
So yeah, I just want to clear some things. Before getting into deep into UI UX part, I just want to clear two things. UI means user interface design and UX means user experience design. These two are different things. User interface basically means visually designing things. And let me just ask you a question. When I say design, what comes to your mind? Please type in the chat section so we can know. We will give you guys like 10 seconds to type in the chat. When I say the word design, what comes to your mind? Like, what is the definition of design for you guys? We just want to know that so we can know what is your thinking about design. Okay, there's web page. Okay, so I just clear things up. So design does not mean visually looking good things. Design means solving a problem related to visual aspect, like aesthetics, related to aesthetics. Design does not mean doing something crazy color thing, doing some looking good kind of 3D things. We don't do in design. Design is a design is the process where you solve a problem that your client has regarding your website, web page, web application, anything, any problem regarding to the user engagement. So that's where UI UX design comes into picture. Okay, so there's actually a rule where uh, imagine if you go onto a website, you type its URL address and you go onto it. So think like you don't get what you want in 3 clicks. Okay, in 3 clicks, you will quit the website. You will quit the tab. You will shut down that website just because you don't find what you want. That's the example of bad design. A user must get within 3 clicks what he wants onto a website. He comes to a website for a particular thing and he wants to get that job done within 3 clicks. So that's an example. You must think about design for building any kind of thing. It's basically a problem solving process for visual aspect things. Okay. Okay, so now what are the 3 E's of good design? As I said, a design of anything must be easy to use. Design is not used only in building apps or something. Design is everywhere, like in interdisciplinary method, like mechanical engineer also focuses on designing their products. Okay, so they must know how to design their motor, how to design their like I don't know much about mechanical engineering, but I'm just saying design is everywhere. You just know how to use a good design, how to build a good design, what are the aspects are used in the design. So a design must be easy to use. Consider you open, as Sushil said, give an example about Swiggy. When you open Swiggy app, do you think about what will happen if I click this? What will happen if I click that? Do you even think about that? Without even thinking for a second, you just click things and get your job done. You just place your order and everything. That's an example of good design. A user must not think what he should do in when he goes onto a design. Okay, goes on to a web page, then easy to understand. Like I said, user must not waste his time to figure out your design, what you have built for him, like what this button do, what that feature do, how do I get this thing done. Okay, and that's the effective for end goal. User use your application only for one thing, and that to get his job done, not to increase his work. Okay, so make sure that when you are building anything, try to think about design and make your web application easy to use, easy to understand, and make user satisfied with the job he is getting done. Okay, so yeah, we are going to take a quiz. I don't want you guys to unmute yourself and speak out loud and all. Just type in the comment what we are asking you guys. Okay. So yeah, these are some design related questions. We just want to clear your aspect, your doubts regarding design. Okay. We are making this session interactive. So please, we want your replies in the chat section. Okay. So Sushil, please guide through this quiz. Sushil.
So yeah, we've got two designs in front of you. You guys have already answered. So yeah, we've got three buttons on the left, which seemed highly striking. They all seem the same. But on the right, you've got one button which stands out, and you've got other two buttons which are below it, which are not that significant. In UI terms, we call it secondary buttons, and the login one is the primary one. So as you have all written in the chat, the right one is the correct way to represent a UI. Yeah, you're totally true, because it actually guides the user to actually making one decision compared to the three compared over here. So whenever you land on the design on the right, you won't actually think, okay, you have to make a decision. Should I click on login? Should I click on sign up? Or should I click on forget password? So that's the thing about user experience. This is, you know what we did? This is actually user experience, the research which we did right now. We show an audience a set of two or three designs, and they actually give the feedback for it, and based on that feedback we actually uh, make our changes. So let's do another one, since this was a good idea. So which one? Now this one's going to be tough, but let's see.
Okay, so yeah, most of you guys are right. And why is B more visually looking good? Why is that design quality? Why it is an example of good design? Because when you are showing a graph, you must not show the curve. It will just look. It will make user to interpret hard. It will just make user scratch their head. Okay, so we don't represent graph by using curves and all. We show them using flat. This is an example of good design and bad design. Hope this clears your aspect and doubts
Another
regarding
point,
design. Uh,
another point which I like to add is that you've been taught for graphs to be rectangular. Like adding a curve to it, making something new for you, it's going to completely screw your flow when it comes to UX. So when you're designing UX, you have to always remember that make something which is clearly known to the user compared to making something new. So yeah, let's talk about building user experiences. So major brands out there have their own design system. Swiggy has their own design system. Even Uber has their own design system. And even the top three brands which I've represented over here have their own design system. Apple has their own human interface guidelines, which is is their own system on how to design things for, let's say, Mac, iOS, or the Apple Watch. Google has their own material design guideline system, where if you want to design card, mostly design cars, you have to follow Google's material design thing, because every brand has company has built their own design system to build on top of it. And Microsoft's own Fluent design system, which was launched recently, we'll be seeing those changes very soon in the Outlook and all across all the platforms. And the most important thing about this, all these resources are available online, so if you look up on these sites, you'll easily get those resources. So why guidelines exist is the question which I want to answer. Guidelines exist because, let's say, designers don't want to an icon or something. these companies have actually combined developed ready-made set of icons which you can use, or let's say a ready-made set of cards, or mostly used but sets like icons, buttons, or typography, compiled into all single page where designers can easily access and use. So that's where guideline comes into a picture. And if you're making an app, say specifically for Apple, you're going to make it just using the human interface guidelines. You won't be using material designs because Apple's strict policy of having control over the Play Store will outright deny it. So yeah, whenever you're making a platform specific app, you actually need to keep in mind the guidelines for that specific platform.
Okay, so yeah, now what is designing and what is prototyping? If you have ever got into UI UX design, you must have heard of those two things. So yeah, let me tell you what is designing. Designing basically is solving a problem. Okay, it is the process. And what is prototyping? Prototyping is when you build a user interface for your device or for your application. You need to show the client the actual functionality of that design. So that's when prototyping comes into picture. Prototyping is the tool. Prototyping is basically a concept where you add functionality to the design by adding animations and click call to action buttons. You add all those functionality like clicking a button, sliding the images, like all those things. When you add those functionality to the design, the clients can interpret, okay, this is a good design. Okay, the user must click on this button so to get this thing done. Okay, so that is what prototyping is. Because when I show you a design, like a simple image of a design, you won't understand what is the use of that design. You must know what should I click, how should I interact with that design in order to know the use of that design. Okay, so yeah, that's designing and prototyping. Then what are the tools are used by UI UX designer to create all this kind of user interfaces and user experience and all? So there's Photoshop you can use. There are multiple tools you can use. Okay, you must know how to build it. But just learn the skill, not the tool, I must say, because there are various functionality comes with different tools. Photoshop is there in market. Some prefer to use Photoshop. Some prefer Adobe XD. You can Google it. Then there's Sketch. Sketch is mostly for iOS users because it is not available for Windows. Then there's Figma. Figma is the most used, loved application for building user interface by the community. We also use that. We also use Figma. It's just nothing. Figma is just love in building user interfaces. So yeah, Sushil will show you some good mocks, good design examples. So yeah, just design.
So now I'm going to walk you through some mocks which we've come across on Behance or Dribble. Behance and Dribbles are sites where you actually can post your design and get feedback on it. It's kind of the Instagram for designers. Anyways, so coming back, I'm going to walk you through some mockups and show you what stands out about them. So right in front of me, I've got a Starbucks app mockup which is done by the community. And over here, the typography and this theme of soft UI goes really, really well. I'll see if you know there's a color scheme which is going on. The typical green of Starbucks uh, and the coffee color, which is the light brownish color, which I'll so there's a specific flow to the app. You can easily navigate. You've got big buttons where you can easily interact with and get onto the pages. And there's a nav bar at the bottom. So here's why it's important to keep the nav bar at the bottom. I want you to pick your phone phone right in your hand right now and see where the reach of your thumb is. It's mostly present from the bottom to the edge of the screen for the right hand. And so if you've got a navgar present above near the Starbucks where the Starbucks logo is, you won't be able to actually interact with it that much. So that's why it's important keeping your nav bar at the bottom when it comes to UI UX design. Next
Okay,
slide.
so yeah, I just want to add this is a mock-up of Starbucks, and the why the green color is used because that's the logo, that's the brand quality that a Starbucks has. Like green color is the brand. When you see that Starbucks logo, that green color, you will know, yeah, this is the Starbucks apps. Starbucks app. Okay, so these are the small things that you must know when building user interfaces, how to use colors, how to use where to use them. You can't just blindly add colors, and all that things. You must do a research. That's where user experience designer come into picture. They decide all these functionalities, all the things in a design that we are going to use. They specify all these things. Okay, so moving on to next slide.
So here we have a mock-up of a smart home app, which is going to be used to control the Alexa or the Apple HomePod for that matter. So basically, it's going to control every device of your house, and it's for iOS. And I must say, this is one of my favorite design which is out there. It's one of the coolest designs I've seen. So we've got a good morning message for the user so that he gets a sense that he's special. Mostly UX is about making the user feel special. Okay, if you are able to nail this point, your app is going to be a huge success. And after that, we've got the button for scenes where you can easily navigate to. If you want to play music, you can tap on the music icon, or if you want to turn it into the night mode or watch a movie, you've got icons for it. So the navigation is right close. Well, navigation is right close. When you just put your eyes on it, the navigation is right there. Then there's the living room which comes under it, so you can easily access the most used quarters, most used settings for your living room easily. And you've got air conditioner on the side, and then other devices which are connected through your home Wi-Fi to easily interact with. And that's an example of good UI, because the user has got ton of options where we can interact with all everything he needs is at the palm of his hands. And the same scenario comes to mobile, right? Designing for an iPad is a different concept, and designing for a mobile is a different concept. And if you look closely, the brand and the image identity stays quite the same, right? You've got the morning text, you've got the icons to navigate for the preset modes, and you've got the living room right under it. So yeah, that's the example of good UI, and we've just run through the box which we had. Ashwin, would you like to talk on this one?
Okay, so yeah. So this is a Texan sensor. This is a kind of design you will see a lot now these days when you go on to Dribble, Behance. This is a kind of design you use these vibrant colors. Okay, so this is what defines a brand. Okay, when you design an app and anything like mobile application, web application, so you must a user must know right away that this is the app I'm using, this is the brand of the application. Okay, so that's why design factors are important, and there are some that is why guidelines are introduced by most of the top high end brands. Okay, like Google, Apple, and many brands. So moving on to next. So how to pick up this craft? I know we have not touched the details of UI UX design, because once we get into that, you will. I don't want to scare you guys. Okay. So you do have to you have to do your research on your own about UI UX. We're just showing you the way. What are the things you need to focus on when you are getting yourself into UI UX design? Design does not mean visually looking good. It is actually a problem solving process. So first solve the problem that is related to visual, then decide the other aspect of the design. There are many aspects of the design. Visually looking good is one of it. Okay, so yeah, how do you get into UI UX design? How should you master that skill? So there are three steps we recommend, and we are still doing it. Is we copy most of designers work. Yeah, you heard it right, we copy those things because they are masters of it. They have been doing it since like 10 years, 15 years. They know the small things, that small rule, what must be the distance, what must be the padding, what should be the color scheme you must use, what must be the places. See, if you can't change a design system immediately, user will never know what was your design thinking, because a user is a user. he his thinking process and your thinking process is different. You can't think you can't think about like what is your design thinking when building an app. You must think from a user's perspective when building a design. What will user need, what will user think when he wants to get his job done? He will come to your application for a specific thing. He must know what to do when he gets into your app, and he must know what to do in order to get the job done. So yeah, we recommend you three steps. Create a portfolio website first. Create a design of your portfolio website. Now, what is a portfolio website? It is a website. It is a kind of resume, but a website. You have to add your all the educational uh, uh, achievements, all the work experience, everything. How to contact you, your about stuff and everything. So yeah, start by building a portfolio website, and then try to implement some actual design designed by designers, top designers. We are going to recommend some designers you have to follow on Instagram, so that you will get a good understanding of a good design. Okay, we don't want to get you into bad design things. Okay, see only good design, so that you will know what is a good design mean. Then showcase your work on some, like you can show your work like on Dribble, Behance, even on Instagram. There are people that see, user feedback is very important when it comes to design. It is an iterative process. You have to keep changing your design when it comes to your building a design for an app. You have to make continuous changes. You have to improve things continuously. That's how a good design, that's the thing good design is. So yeah, here is a concept Instagram user experience mockup created by Sushil. So Sushil will explain this slide.
Okay, so what a shameless plug. So okay, so I created this Instagram concept when I was actually frustrated with Instagram, when it was not innovating that much when it come to its UX, and it was kind of keeping the same. So let me guide you from the beginning. So on the leftmost side, we've got the new camera UI. I've specifically designed this for the iOS app, so it has got the iOS elements in it, where you've got the bottom nav to swipe and actually change the modes for the camera layout. Then you've got the main feed, where you will be interacting with the post from the content creators you love, where you've got excellent material UI design. And so I've combined a mixture of material design UI and actually Apple's human guideline system. If you're making an cross-platform app, then it's allowed. But if you're making a small project or something, to put it on Apple, as strictly recommend sticking you to the guidelines. Anyway, so we've got the problem which another problem which I faced was that my favorite content creators weren't getting much attention from me, because they usually used to get easily, like they didn't stand out basically. So whenever your favorite content creator posts a story, it will actually show up in a blue ring instead of the usual Instagram gradient. So yeah, that's a new feature which I thought about. Then obviously the visual changes. Then moving to the search bar, which was actually I was very proud on it, coming up with. Basically, the first style gets you the video. So Instagram is keen on video, because video is what makes people stick to their app, right? So that's why Instagram has videos placed right in its search feed, and I didn't want to take away that feature. So I created a widescreen tile just for you to showcase the videos. Then obviously the food, travel, vlogs, so easily everything is sorted, and you can just tap on one hashtag to get over there. Another problem which I've thought of solving is that I can't network using Instagram, because there aren't uh, people based like I can't actually network with people who are on my same level, or on working on the same thing as me. So I came up with a network page where you'll be matched, you'll be given suggestions based on uh, you'll be given suggestion based on the accounts you interact with. Say I interact with coding accounts more, then Steve Codes will be a perfect recommendation for me. So that's the plan of network. That's the feature which I wanted. Then obviously that's how the next mockup is going to be of a post, like how a sample post is going to be looking like. And on the last one, we have the feed, with, where I've split it into two parts actually. First one, the about section talks about yourself, like what's your profile about, the following followers which you have. And the bottom section is actually focused on your content, your feed, what all you have posted. So that's the design which I had when I was creating the Insta mockup. So if you go back to the previous slide, you'll actually see I'll talk about the how I integrated the three-step processes. Ashwin, could you take me back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
So I made a mock-up for a well-known brand, tech. I see a problem, I try to solve it, tech. Showcase to a work to someone from the industry and get their review on it. I actually showed my work to I showed my work to the product manager for Outlook from Microsoft, and he has given a review for it. It's on my Instagram post. So if you follow me on Sushil.Buragute, you will be able to see his review. Now over to you, Ashwin.
Yeah. So, did you see the process of Sushil? How he came to a problem and then he found a solution for it. This is what design process is. You have to get a problem and then solve it using your own design thinking. Okay. So yeah, this is a concept art of a social app I was building. It is not complete yet, and if I have to show you the full uh, concept art, it is going to be huge. Okay, so I don't want to show you the full music app yet, but yes, this is some of it I have created. The designs I am showing some of it. So moving on to next slide, let's review some concepts. Okay, so what you have learned in this webinar: get HTML, master HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then once you are done with front end, you don't have to go to the back end directly. You can host your front end part on using Firebase. Then once
Ashwin and Sushil for their wonderful presentation. Before moving ahead to the Q&A section, I would like to add some interesting points. We have planned SIGs, that is Special Interest Group, for all the students who are interested in learning web development and UX design ahead by our expertise. SIGs are basically a group where you will learn from the expertise and can maintain a relationship between everyone who likes to learn. Summing up on, I would request you all to fill the feedback form and claim your e-certificate with the invite link to WhatsApp group where you will get connected with the expertise and many other learners. So now let's move on to the question answer section.
okay, so yeah, anyone have any questions?
Guys, you can unmute your mics now and ask the questions.
Even you can type in the chat. We can answer. We can see your question. Yeah, and please fill the feedback form. You will get your certificate of participation in 2 to 3 working days. Okay, so don't ping us for certificate. You will get it through mail in few days. Okay, and please make sure you fill the feedback form. Only then you will get your certificates.
Guys, don't just leave just yet, because we've got amazing web design concepts to show with you right now.
Yeah. Some of you want a demo, right? I'll show you a demo. Just if you have any doubt, you can type into the chat box. We are waiting for it. Till then, I will just show you one app I have built.
Hello.
Yeah.
Whenever you open a website, sometimes it shows that this website provides cookies. So what are cookies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cookies are basically trackers where, let's say you're visiting Facebook. Facebook is gonna store actually on your browser that, okay, let's say you're visiting, what are your interests actually, Satak?
Interest as in, what are you asking about?
Anything which you browse on the internet.
Like I like superheroes.
Okay, so are you a Marvel fan or a DC fan, first of all?
Marvel.
Okay, thankfully I didn't say DC. Anyways, so yeah, you're a Marvel fan, you're checking things out on the Facebook Marvel page. So what Facebook will actually do is save that you've actually seen the Marvel page for other cookie providers to use. Now, let's say you go on to Instagram, or even better, let's say you go on Amazon. Amazon will see, okay, there's a Facebook cookie which is right here. Maybe I should access it. And based on that, it's gonna see, oh, you've been a Marvel, you are a Marvel fan, right? And based on that, it's gonna bombard you with more ads based on Marvel merchandise. So that's the concept of cookies. Basically, basically tracking you wherever you go throughout the web.
Yeah, it's just used for ads and other stuff. It's just like stealing your data, but it's legal. Okay.
So if you're deep into privacy concerns, I'll recommend you to close cookies. But yeah, if some websites might break if their backend is not written correctly.
Okay, so here's an app I have built using simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. No framework is used, nothing is used, just plain vanilla JavaScript. Okay, so when I press the button like A, S, B, it plays a music. Okay, are you able to hear the sound?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, this is some demo we are showing that what is the power of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like you can build anything using that vanilla. You don't have to use any framework and all for building simple productive apps. Okay, for like to-do list, we are giving you some project ideas. Like you can build to-do list, you can build calculator, you can build simple clock using plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we just recommend you get into that things, master those things, and
Ashwin, can you talk about how much time did it take for you to build that app?
like 1 hour mostly.
So yeah, the barrier for entry into web development is very, very low. We highly recommend that you start working on it. So let me just show you some cool concepts which I've just come across.
So yeah, do you have any doubts?
So
You
there's this
can.
website called awards, right? It actually gives out awards to the people who have done the most in web design, and it has site of the day, site of the month, and you can put a website over here if you are that good at coding. So I've got a couple of things listed out over here. So let's get right into it. So here's James Warner's portfolio website, right? He's actually made this using the Mon stack and used a 3D framework called 3JS for it. If you look at the details of it, wherever my cursor is going, the head is rotating. And even the micro interactions for the UI. So whenever I hover over this image, it has got a placeholder for it. So now let's say I have to check out his blog, and the animation, everything is all spot on. He's actually worked over a year for this one award. And moving on to another one, this is kind of a basic one. Maybe I'll. So I want your attention right over here. Okay, because I'm gonna scroll and you might miss it. How cool is that? So I'll put this link in the chat for you to all interact with. This guy has done some amazing work when it comes to UI UX.
Yeah, as a web developer, your role in design plays a great role in design. Okay, you just can't blindly build an app. You must think about designs. That's why we have included UI UX design in this web development session. Okay, so
So
if you want to know more, okay, Sushil, you continue.
here's another concept for a probably a I'll say a furniture shop because it has got a ton of furniture. This is a horizontal scrolling website, and whenever you click, there is furniture to interact with, and there is a parallax effect of text going on. Obviously, this would have taken a ton of time to make, but it's all worth it because see, I'm hooked to their website, right? I'm not going anywhere out. Compared to Amazon, this has a higher rate of retention for me. So that's what good UX does for you. And here's a Japanese brand of Coke, if I'm right, another drink or something. But yeah, it won the design award for last month.
So we are showing you the superpowers of a web developer. Web developer can build so many amazing things that you can't. You can bring imagination to life. Okay, this is what a web developer can do. So yeah, we will give you link in the description. and you can see those things yourself. You will know what a web developer can do. And take note how these website are looking on desktop and how it is rendering on for mobile. So you have to take note of those small things. Okay, as a web developer, you should pay attention to these small things. That what makes you a good developer, and that was big company pays you for. So hope you like our session. Please fill the feedback form. If you have any doubt, if you have any query, if you want some more detailed session from us, we are happy, more than happy to give, provide you that, conduct those session. So you can connect to us on Instagram, LinkedIn, anywhere, or else you can connect to the ACM team. They will arrange the session, whatever session you want. Okay, just connect to them. We are always available for you.
Thank you guys
Yeah,
so much for sticking around. You gave us one of the time. I hope you've got the value from it.
yeah. See, we just gave you the idea of what web development and UI UX is. So if you want a more detailed session, we are going to arrange that in future, but stay tuned for that, okay? We just hope that we give you the value that you want. Yeah, Shubham, ask what is it
Uh,
you want?
Hello, my voice is audible.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Good evening. It was indeed an very much informative session. Thanks, Sushil and Ashwin. My question is, as a fresher level, as there are many controversies in learning Node.js or Dino.js, as Ashwin has also might have introduced his blog regarding Dino and Node. As a fresher level, what should I learn first? Is it necessary for me to learn Dino or to get stick to Node itself? Can you please elaborate more a bit?
Ashwin,
Okay,
should I go first?
okay, sure.
The guy who has actually made Dino is the guy who he's the same guy who made Node.js. So what's the story behind Dino is that the guy who made Node.js saw that there's some couple of problems in my code, and that what happens to developers, right? If you look back on your code from a year back, you said like ये किसने लिखा है? कौन है ये developer? And then you look at yourself in the mirror and feel guilty about it. Anyway, another story, but yeah, that's what happened to him. After 10 years, he said, okay, I can't completely rework the Node.js framework. Instead, what I'll do is I'll make another framework by the name of Dino. So that's the story behind Dino, and Ashwin will tell you about the technical part as he has written a blog on it.
Yeah, see, Dino is yet to make its mark onto the market. Okay, so as a beginner, you must learn Node.js first because it won't go in vain. Because whatever you are going to build on Node.js is will work on Dino also. So as a beginner, I would suggest you to go for Node.js, master Node.js completely. Then once Dino comes into the market, once it get its community, you can work on Dino also. It's not a problem. But if you learn Node.js, it will be an advantage. Okay, it won't go in vain. Hope you have cleared your doubts. So
Yes, thank you so much.
welcome. It was a pleasure. So yeah, I hope everyone filled the feedback form. If you have any queries, if you want us to conduct some more detailed session about web development, please reach out to us. Please reach out to ACM team. We are always there for to help you, to arrange session for you. This is what ACM does. So yeah, please connect to us.
So to thank our faculty sponsor, Mr. Mahendra Salamke sir, our head of the department, Dr. Archala Chaugale ma'am, and our principal H.U. Tiwari sir for giving us this opportunity. Thank you all the team members for working and making this event a success. Thank you so much for attending this lecture.
Girls with their nails done now. Girls with their